I promise to pay when I grow up. Black boy asks Millionaire for milk. His response shocks all. The sharp clatter of a glass milk bottle hitting the convenience store floor echoes through the small shop as 8-year-old Elijah Johnson watches in horror, his thin fingers still outstretched. The crying infant strapped to his chest with a makeshift carrier fashioned from an old t-shirt squirms against him. Milk spreads across the worn linoleum like a white tide, surrounding his scuffed sneakers. The shopkeeper's face transforms from surprise to anger in an instant, his weathered features hardening as he steps around the counter. "That's $4.99 you owe me now, boy," the man says, voice cutting through the quiet store. "You break it, you buy it." Elijah's wide eyes fill with unshed tears as he frantically pats his empty pockets. The baby, his 6-month-old sister Zora, wails louder, her tiny face scrunched in distress. I don't have any money, sir," he stammers, voice barely audible above his sister's cries. "But I need milk for my sister. Our mama's sick. I promise I'll pay when I grow up." The shopkeeper's expression darkens further, but before he can respond, the bell above the door chimes. A tall man in an immaculately tailored charcoal suit enters, his polished leather shoes gleaming under the fluorescent lights. James Whitfield III, local real estate magnate and fixture in the society pages, stops abruptly at the scene before him. A desperate black child holding a crying infant, standing in a puddle of spilled milk, the air thick with tension. Elijah meets the millionaire's gaze, swallows hard, and in a moment of pure desperation asks the question that will change multiple lives forever. "Sir, could you please help me buy milk for my baby sister? I promise I'll pay you back someday." "I promise on everything." What happens next leaves the shopkeeper speechless and sets in motion a chain of events that nobody could have predicted. Because James Whitfield III harbors a secret that connects him to this child in ways neither could imagine. A secret buried for decades that's about to surface with devastating consequences. But to understand how we got here, we need to go back. Back to the choices that led to this moment, to the lives intersecting in this small corner store on a sweltering summer afternoon in Oakwood Heights. If you're finding this story compelling already, make sure to subscribe now so you don't miss what happens next in this extraordinary tale of connection and redemption. The day begins like any other for James Whitfield III. He wakes at precisely 5:30 a.m. in his penthouse overlooking the city, the horizon just beginning to blush with dawn. 62 years of discipline have shaped him into a man of unwavering routine. 20 minutes on his Peloton bike. A protein shake prepared by his housekeeper, Martha. A shower in his marble bathroom with imported Italian fixtures. A suit selected from dozens identical to untrained eyes but distinct in subtle ways that matter to men of his position. By 7:15 a.m., he's in the back of his Mercedes S-Class, driver navigating the morning traffic as James reviews the day's agenda on his tablet. 3 property acquisitions to finalize, a lunch with the mayor, a ribbon cutting at the business school that bears his name, an evening charity gala where he'll be the keynote speaker. "Detour on Maple Avenue, sir," his driver, Reynolds, announces through the intercom. "Construction's backed everything up," James sighs. "Take Oakwood Drive, then." Through the old neighborhood. "Sir," Reynolds sounds surprised. James hasn't requested this route in years. "You heard me, Reynolds." His tone brooks no argument. The car glides through streets that grow progressively narrower, buildings less polished. James stares out the window, face impassive, as they pass corner stores with security grates, laundromats with flickering signs, apartment buildings with chipping paint. This was his world once, before Harvard, before his first million, before he rebranded himself from Jimmy Whitfield to James Whitfield III. His phone rings. The display reads Alina, his ex-wife, calling for the 3rd time this week. "What is it, Alina?" He answers, voice cool. "James." Her voice carries the cultivated accent of old money even after 15 years of divorce. "Did you get the invitation to Caroline's engagement party?" Their daughter, 28, investment banker. Engaged to a surgeon from a family nearly as prestigious as Alina's. "I did. And, will you be attending?" James watches an elderly man slowly crossing the street, leaning heavily on a cane. "I'll have my assistant confirm." "For God's sake, James, it's your daughter's engagement. Caroline deserves." "I have a full calendar, Alina. I'll see what can be arranged." He ends the call before she can respond, slipping the phone into his pocket as the car slows for a red light. Outside the window, a young black boy walks hand in hand with a girl who can't be more than 4. The boy points to something in a store window, and the girl jumps with excitement. For a moment, just a moment, James feels something crack in his carefully constructed facade. "Sir," Reynolds' voice breaks through. "We're approaching downtown. Shall I head directly to the office?" James clears his throat. "No, stop at Caldwell's on 5th. I need coffee." Have a meeting in 20 minutes with the zoning commission. His assistant's voice reminds him through the car's Bluetooth. They can wait, James says simply. When the car pulls up to Caldwell's, James steps out before Reynolds can open his door. The coffee shop is busy with morning commuters, but people instinctively part for him. He's used to it, the power of wealth, of appearance, of reputation. He orders a black coffee and stands waiting, mind already shifting to the acquisitions he'll finalize today. 3 properties in the developing West End. The owners think they're getting good deals. They don't know what James knows, that the city council will approve a new transit line next month, doubling property values overnight. Mr. Whitfield? He turns to find a woman in her 50s looking at him with uncertain recognition. Do I know you? He asks, more brusque than intended. Vivian Taylor. Well, Vivian Morris back then. We went to Oakwood High together. She smiles tentatively. I lived 3 doors down from your mother. Something cold slides down James' spine. I'm afraid you're mistaken, he says, taking his coffee from the barista. I attended Westridge Preparatory. Her smile falters. Oh, I could have sworn. Good day, Miss Taylor. He strides out of the shop, ignoring her confused expression. Back in the car, James sips his coffee and stares straight ahead. The office, Reynolds? Yes, sir. As the car pulls into traffic, James catches sight of his reflection in the window. For a second, he doesn't recognize himself. The morning passes in a blur of meetings and calls. James is sharp, focused, ruthless when needed. No one would guess at the encounter that unsettled him hours earlier. At precisely 1:00 p.m., he concludes a conference call with investors in Singapore and stands from his desk. Sarah, he calls to his assistant, I'm going out. Cancel my lunch with the mayor. Sarah looks up, startled. James Whitfield III does not cancel meetings, especially not with powerful political connections. Sir, the mayor's office has been trying to get on your calendar for weeks. Reschedule, he says, already heading for the elevator. I need some air. 20 minutes later, James finds himself walking along streets far from the gleaming towers of his usual domain. He loosens his tie slightly, an uncharacteristic gesture for a man who prides himself on impeccable appearance at all times. The neighborhood has changed since his youth, gentrification creeping in like ivy, but enough remains the same to stir memories he spent decades burying. He passes a small playground where children chase each other, their laughter carrying on the summer breeze. A group of old men play chess at concrete tables, arguing good-naturedly over moves. James slows, watching them. One man, white-haired and stooped, glances up and meets his eye. For a moment, recognition flickers across the elder's face. James turns quickly and continues walking. He doesn't know why he's here, what he's seeking in these streets he escaped long ago. He only knows that since turning 60 last month, sleep comes harder, and when it does, his dreams are filled with faces he's tried to forget. His mother's tired smile as she left for her second shift. The stern scowl of Mr. Peterson, his high school counselor, telling him college wasn't for boys like him. The disappointment in Marissa's eyes the last time he saw her. Marissa, a name he hasn't allowed himself to think in nearly 4 decades. James stops abruptly, realizing he's walked farther than intended. He's standing before a small convenience store, its windows plastered with advertisements for lottery tickets and cold beer. Something about it seems familiar, though he's certain it wasn't here when. The sound of breaking glass from inside interrupts his thoughts, followed by a child's frightened voice and an infant's wail. Without conscious decision, James finds himself pulling open the door and stepping inside. The scene unfolds before him like something from another world. A thin black boy standing in spilled milk, a baby strapped to his chest, the shopkeeper's face contorted with anger. The boy looks up at James, eyes wide with a desperate hope that strikes him like a physical blow. Sir, could you please help me buy milk for my baby sister? I promise I'll pay you back someday. I promise on everything. In that moment, staring into those pleading eyes, James Whitfield III, who built an empire on calculated decisions, who never acts on impulse, who has trained himself to see the world only in terms of assets and liabilities, feels something shift irreversibly within him. How much for the milk? He asks the shopkeeper, his voice steady despite the strange pounding in his chest. The shopkeeper's expression changes instantly, recognition and deference replacing anger. Mr. Whitfield, I didn't see you come in. Don't worry about this. I'll take care of it. How much? James repeats more firmly. $4.99, sir. But really, it's not necessary for someone like you to. James pulls a crisp $100 bill from his wallet and places it on the counter. Give the boy whatever he needs for his sister. Keep the change. The shopkeeper scrambles to comply, pulling another bottle of milk from the refrigerated section and placing it in a bag with some baby food jars and diapers. The boy stares at James, mouth slightly open, disbelief written across his face. Thank you, sir, he whispers. I promise I'll pay you back when I grow up. Something about the earnestness in his voice, the determined set of his small shoulders despite the obvious weight of responsibility he carries, catches James oddly. What's your name, son? Elijah Johnson, sir, and this is my sister Zora. James nods, a strange tightness in his throat. Where do you live, Elijah? The boy hesitates, wariness creeping into his expression. Magnolia Apartments, Building C, the housing project on the edge of Oakwood Heights. James knows it well, one of the few remaining affordable housing complexes his company hasn't acquired and redeveloped. And your parents? Elijah shifts from one foot to the other. It's just my mama, she's sick today, that's why I'm watching Zora. James studies the boy, the careful way he supports his sister's weight, the worn but clean clothes, the intelligence in his eyes. Something tugs at him, a feeling he can't name. Let me drive you home, he finds himself saying. It's too hot to be walking with a baby. Elijah's wariness deepens. My mama says not to go with strangers. Your mama is right, James concedes. But I'm James Whitfield. You might have seen my name on buildings downtown. Recognition dawns on the boy's face. The Whitfield Tower with the sky garden on top, we learned about it in school. James nods, inexplicably pleased. That's right. Can we go up there someday? My friend Marcus says you can see the whole world from up there. Perhaps, James says, surprising himself with the response. But first, let's get you and your sister home. Outside, Reynolds is parked at the curb, having tracked James' phone location. The driver's eyes widen slightly at the sight of the boy and baby, but he quickly schools his expression. Reynolds, we're giving Elijah and his sister a ride home, to Magnolia Apartments. Yes, sir. If Reynolds is surprised by this unprecedented request, he hides it well. In the back of the luxury car, Elijah sits perched on the edge of the leather seat, the bag of supplies clutched tightly in one hand while he supports Zora with the other. The baby has quieted, big eyes taking in the unfamiliar surroundings. Is this really your car? Elijah asks, voice hushed with awe. It is. It's the nicest car I've ever been in. The boy runs a hand reverently over the leather. How many cars do you have? 3, James answers, then corrects himself. 4, actually. He'd forgotten about the vintage Aston Martin in his Hamptons garage. Wow. Elijah's eyes are wide. Did you always have nice cars? The question catches James off guard. No, he says after a moment. My family didn't have a car when I was growing up. Really? But you're rich now. I am? How did you get rich? James considers how to answer. The sanitized version he usually offers at interviews and commencement speeches feels hollow in the face of this child's direct question. Worked hard, he says finally. I saw opportunities others didn't and I took them. Sometimes that meant making difficult choices. Elijah nods solemnly. My mama works hard too. She has 3 jobs, but we're not rich. The simple observation lands like an accusation, though James knows the boy doesn't intend it that way. Before he can respond, Reynolds announces, We've arrived, sir. Magnolia Apartments looms before them, a series of weathered brick buildings arranged around concrete courtyards. Laundry hangs from some balconies. Children play on a rusted playground structure despite the afternoon heat. Building C, sir? Reynolds asks. Yes, please, Elijah answers, sitting up straighter as they approach his home. The car draws curious stares as it pulls up to the entrance. James notices the broken security door, the crumbling concrete steps, the flickering hallway light visible through grimy windows. His company owns the land adjacent to this complex, land that would be significantly more valuable if Magnolia Apartments were to be redeveloped into the luxury condos his team has been pushing for. Which apartment? James asks as they exit the car. 306, Elijah says, leading the way, but I can go up myself if you're busy. I'll see you to your door, James finds himself saying, following the boy into the building. The elevator is out of order. A handwritten sign indicates it's been that way for months. They climb 3 flights of stairs, the stairwell smelling of damp and disinfectant. Elijah navigates it easily despite his burden, clearly accustomed to the climb. Apartment 306 has a worn welcome mat and a small potted plant beside the door. Elijah shifts Zora's weight and knocks. Mama, it's me. After a moment, the door opens to reveal a young woman in her late 20s, wrapped in a faded bathrobe. Her face is drawn with exhaustion, eyes slightly glazed, but she straightens immediately at the sight of James standing behind her children. Elijah, what's going on? Who is this? Her voice is hoarse, but her stance is protective, one arm automatically reaching for her son. Mama, this is Mr. Whitfield. He bought milk for Zora when I dropped it, and he gave me a ride home in his fancy car. The woman's eyes widen with recognition, then narrow with suspicion. James Whitfield, what are you doing with my son? Her reaction surprises James. As he said, I simply provided some assistance when it was needed. She studies him for a long moment, then turns to Elijah. Go inside, baby. Take your sister to the living room. Elijah looks between them, sensing tension he doesn't understand. But Mama, now Elijah. The boy nods reluctantly. Thank you again, Mr. Whitfield, he says, then slips past his mother into the apartment. Once the children are out of earshot, the woman crosses her arms. What do you really want? Excuse me. Men like you don't just help children out of the goodness of your hearts, especially not in neighborhoods like this. So I'll ask again, what do you want? James feels a flare of indignation at her assumption. I assure you, Ms. Johnson, Tanya Johnson. Ms. Johnson. I simply saw a child in need and offered assistance. Nothing more. She looks skeptical. You expect me to believe James Whitfield who's buying up half of Oakwood Heights to build luxury condos nobody around here can afford, just happened to be in a corner store when my son needed help. Her knowledge of his business affairs catches him off guard. You know who I am. Everyone in this neighborhood knows who you are, Mr. Whitfield. Your company's been trying to buy out this building for 3 years. The only reason we're still here is because Mr. Gaines refuses to sell. Lawrence Gaines, the elderly owner of Magnolia Apartments, the last holdout in James' planned redevelopment project. I see, James says carefully. Well, I can assure you my presence here today has nothing to do with business. Tanya's expression remains guarded. Then why were you in Oakwood Heights? This isn't exactly your usual territory. The question hits closer to home than she could know. James considers deflecting, then finds himself saying, I grew up not far from here. Surprise flickers across her face. You're from Oakwood. A long time ago, he says, suddenly uncomfortable with the direction of the conversation. In any case, I should be going. I'm glad I could help your son today. Tanya's posture softens slightly. Thank you for that and for bringing him home safely. She hesitates, then adds, Elijah's a good boy. He takes too much responsibility on himself sometimes. He seems very devoted to his sister. He is. A note of pride enters her voice. He's been helping with Zora since she was born. His teachers say he could skip a grade if he wanted to. He's that smart. James nods, thinking of the boy's articulate speech and thoughtful questions. I believe it. An awkward silence falls between them. James realizes he has no idea why he's still standing here, having this conversation with a woman he's never met, in a building he's been trying to acquire for years. Well, he says finally, I should let you rest. You mentioned you were unwell. Tanya touches her throat self-consciously. Just a summer flu. I'll be fine in a day or two. Is there anything you need? Medication, perhaps? She stiffens again. We're not a charity case, Mr. Whitfield. I didn't mean to imply. Mama, Elijah's voice interrupts as he peeks around the door. Zora's hungry. Can I feed her now? Tanya's expression softens as she turns to her son. Yes, baby, I'll be right there. She turns back to James. Thank you again for your help today, Mr. Whitfield. The dismissal is clear. James nods. You're welcome, Ms. Johnson. Good day. As he turns to leave, Elijah calls out, Will you come back sometime, Mr. Whitfield, to talk about the tower and how you got rich? Before James can respond, Tanya says firmly, Mr. Whitfield is a very busy man, Elijah. He has important meetings to get to. James looks at the boy's hopeful expression, then at Tanya's guarded one. Perhaps someday, he says noncommittally, then heads for the stairs. Back in his car, James sits silently for a long moment. Back to the office, sir? Reynolds asks. No, James decides suddenly. Take me to Gaines' real estate on Maple. Reynolds raises an eyebrow but nods. Yes, sir. Lawrence Gaines is in his 80s now, his once bustling real estate office reduced to a small storefront with yellowing listing photos in the window. When James walks in, the old man is sitting behind a cluttered desk, reading glasses perched on his nose as he reviews paperwork. He looks up and recognition dawns immediately. Well, James Whitfield himself, come to make another offer on Magnolia. Hello, Lawrence. James takes a seat across from him without waiting for an invitation. As a matter of fact, I have. The answer's still no. Gaines removes his glasses. Those people have homes there, families, lives. I'm not letting you turn it into another playground for the rich. What if I'm not planning to tear it down? Gaines narrows his eyes. What game are you playing now, Whitfield? No game. James leans forward. I want to buy the property, but I'm willing to commit legally to maintaining it as affordable housing. More than that, I'm prepared to invest in significant improvements to the building and facilities. The older man stares at him suspiciously. Why the sudden change of heart? Your people have been pushing for luxury redevelopment for years. James considers how much to reveal. Let's just say I had a reminder today of where I came from, of what it means to struggle. Gaines' expression shifts, something like recognition flickering in his eyes. Jimmy Whitfield, he says softly. I remember when you were just a skinny kid running errands for your mama. James stiffens. Few people alive still remember that version of him, and fewer still would dare mention it to his face. That was a long time ago. Not so long that you've forgotten, apparently. Gaines studies him. What's your real angle here, Jimmy? It's James, he corrects automatically. And there's no angle, consider it, corporate social responsibility. Gaines barks a laugh. That's a fancy term for what most folks would call doing the right thing. Call it what you will. James keeps his voice even. Are you interested in discussing terms? The old man leans back in his chair, considering. Maybe. But I'd need ironclad guarantees, and I'd want oversight of the renovation plans. I'm sure we can come to an arrangement. James stands. Have your lawyer call mine tomorrow. As he turns to leave, Gaines says, You know, I always wondered what happened to that boy who won the city scholarship, the one everyone said would make something of himself. James pauses at the door. He did, he says without turning around. Just not in the way people expected. Gaines makes a noncommittal sound. Did he make himself happy, though? That's the real question. James doesn't answer, just steps out into the late afternoon sun where Reynolds waits with the car door open. The office now, sir? James checks his watch. 4:30 p.m. The ribbon cutting at the business school is at 5:00. He should go. His name is on the building, after all. His speech is prepared, his presence expected. No, he says, surprising himself again. Take me back to Magnolia Apartments. Reynolds blinks. Sir, you heard me. James slides into the backseat, mind already racing ahead. When they pull up to Building C again, James instructs Reynolds to wait. This time he doesn't hesitate at the broken security door or the dimly lit stairwell. He climbs to the third floor with purpose and knocks on door 306. Tanya opens it, surprise evident on her face. She's dressed now in jeans and a simple t-shirt, her hair pulled back. Mr. Whitfield. From inside, he hears Elijah's excited voice. Mr. Whitfield came back. Mama, can I talk to him? Before she can answer, James says, I'd like to speak with both of you if I may. It won't take long. Tanya hesitates, then steps aside reluctantly. Come in. The apartment is small but scrupulously clean. Mismatched furniture arranged with care. Walls painted a cheerful yellow, a bookshelf overflowing with books. It reminds James uncomfortably of his childhood home, the pride his mother took in their small space, how she'd scrimped to buy him books from the second-hand store. Elijah sits on a worn sofa, feeding Zora with a bottle. He looks up with a bright smile. You came back. I did. James remains standing, feeling strangely out of place in his expensive suit. I have a proposition for you and your mother. Tanya crosses her arms. What kind of proposition? I've just come from speaking with Lawrence Gaines. I'm purchasing Magnolia Apartments. Her face pales. You're evicting us after pretending to help my son? No, James says quickly. The opposite, in fact. I'm buying the property to renovate it, but all current residents will stay. Rents will remain at current levels. Tanya stares at him. Why would you do that? It makes no business sense. Not everything is about business. The words feel foreign on his tongue, yet somehow right. That's not why I came back. I came to offer Elijah an opportunity. The boy perks up, eyes wide. What kind of opportunity? James turns to him. You asked about how I became successful. The truth is it started with education. I was fortunate enough to receive a scholarship that changed my life. He pauses. I'd like to offer you something similar, a place at Westridge Preparatory School with all expenses covered through graduation, and a college fund for afterward. Tanya gasps. Westridge. That's the most expensive private school in the city. It also has the best academic program and virtually guarantees admission to top universities. James keeps his eyes on Elijah. Your mother says you're smart enough to skip a grade. I believe education should be available to bright minds regardless of background. Elijah looks bewildered. You want to send me to a fancy school? Why? It's a fair question, one James isn't entirely sure he can answer. Let's just say I see potential in you, Elijah, the kind that shouldn't go to waste. But my friends are at Oakwood Elementary, the boy says, suddenly uncertain. And who would help Mama with Zora? Tanya kneels beside her son. Baby, this is an amazing opportunity. We could figure everything else out. Elijah looks at her, then back at James. Would I still live here with Mama and Zora? Of course, James answers. The scholarship covers tuition, books, uniforms, and transportation. You'd come home every day. The boy thinks for a moment, then asks, Can I think about it? The response surprises James. Most children, most adults, for that matter, would jump at such an offer without hesitation. Of course you can think about it. Tanya stands looking at James with a mixture of suspicion and hope. This is extremely generous, Mr. Whitfield, but I have to ask again, why my son? James considers how much to reveal. The truth is, he's not entirely sure himself. Something about the boy's determined promise to pay him back, the responsibility he shoulders at such a young age, the intelligence behind his eyes, it all reminds James of himself at that age. Before ambition hardened into something colder, before success became measured only in dollars and acquisitions. Consider it an investment in potential, he says finally. No strings attached. Tanya studies him for a long moment. There are always strings, Mr. Whitfield, always. Before James can respond, his phone rings. The display reads Alina again. Excuse me, he says, stepping toward the door. I need to take this. Outside in the hallway, he answers. What is it now, Alina? Where are you? Her voice is tight with irritation. The ceremony started 20 minutes ago. The dean has called me twice. The ribbon cutting, he'd forgotten completely. I won't be attending, he says. You what? James, they named the building after you. The mayor is there, the board of trustees. They can cut the ribbon without me. Something more important came up. A stunned silence then. More important than your own legacy, than the Whitfield name? Yes, he says simply, surprising himself with how true it feels. I'll call you tomorrow, Alina. He ends the call and turns to find Elijah standing in the doorway, watching him curiously. Was that your wife? The boy asks. Ex-wife, James corrects. We've been divorced for 15 years. Elijah considers this. My friend Marcus's parents are divorced too. He says it's better because they don't yell at each other anymore. The observation, so matter-of-fact, draws an unexpected chuckle from James. That's one way of looking at it. Mr. Whitfield, Elijah fidgets with the hem of his shirt. I've been thinking about your offer. Already that was quick. The boy nods solemnly. I want to say yes, but only if you promise something. What's that? Will you come talk to my class sometime? About your buildings and businesses. Marcus says you're the richest man in the whole city, and the other kids would think it was really cool. James feels an unfamiliar warmth in his chest. I think that could be arranged. Elijah breaks into a wide smile. Then yes, I want to go to the fancy school. Excellent, I'll have my assistant start the paperwork tomorrow. James hesitates, then adds, there's something else I'd like to propose to your mother about her work situation. She's inside giving Zora a bath, Elijah says. But she always says she wishes she could be home more. She misses a lot of my school stuff because of her jobs. James nods, an idea forming. Perhaps we can address that as well. When he re-enters the apartment, Tanya is coming out of the small bathroom, Zora wrapped in a towel in her arms. The baby gurgles happily, reaching for her mother's face. Elijah tells me he's accepted your offer, Tanya says, her expression a mixture of emotions James can't quite read. He has. We can discuss the details later this week, once my team has prepared the necessary documentation. James pauses. There's something else I'd like to discuss. I understand you're working multiple jobs. Tanya's guard comes up immediately. I provide for my children. I have no doubt of that. But Elijah mentioned you miss many of his school events because of your work schedule. I do what I have to do, she says stiffly. Not everyone has the luxury of choosing when they work. What if you did have that choice? James asks. My foundation is looking for a community liaison for our Oakwood Heights initiatives, someone who knows the neighborhood, who understands the needs of the residents. The position offers flexible hours and a competitive salary. Benefits, too. Tanya stares at him. You're offering me a job now? Mr. Whitfield, I don't understand what's happening here. This morning you were a name on a building. Now you're buying our apartment complex, offering my son a scholarship and giving me a job? What's the catch? It's a fair question, one James is still working out himself. The day has taken turns he never could have predicted when he woke this morning. But standing in this small apartment, seeing the proud way Tanya holds herself despite her circumstances, watching Elijah's careful attention to his sister, something long dormant stirs in him. The catch, Ms. Johnson, is that I'm asking you to trust me, despite what you may have heard about me, despite what you may think about men in my position. James straightens his tie, a habitual gesture when he feels off balance. Sometimes people surprise you, sometimes they even surprise themselves. Tanya bounces Zora gently as she considers his words. I need to think about the job offer. This is all happening very fast. Of course, take all the time you need. James takes a business card from his pocket and places it on the coffee table. My personal number is on the back. Call me when you've decided or if you have any questions about Elijah's scholarship. As he turns to leave, Elijah says, Mr. Whitfield, thank you for the milk and everything else. James finds himself smiling, a genuine smile that feels unfamiliar on his face. You're welcome, Elijah. I look forward to seeing what you'll accomplish at Westridge. Outside, as Reynolds holds the car door, James pauses to look back at the weathered building. For the first time in years, perhaps decades, he feels something like peace. Where to now, sir? Reynolds asks. James checks his watch. The charity gala starts in 2 hours. His speech, crafted by his PR team, full of careful platitudes about giving back and corporate responsibility, sits in his briefcase. Home, Reynolds, he says. I need to rewrite my speech for tonight. And for those of you watching this story unfold, we'd love to hear your thoughts. Where are you watching from? Subscribe and comment below to join our community as we continue this journey. 6 months later, on a crisp winter morning, James stands in the gleaming lobby of Westridge Preparatory School. Students in Navy uniforms stream past, hardly noticing the man whose name appears on donor plaques throughout the building. He checks his watch, a new habit, this waiting for someone else's schedule rather than expecting others to conform to his. Mr. Whitfield? He turns to see Elijah hurrying toward him, backpack bouncing against his shoulder. The boy looks different now, slightly taller, more confident in his movements, the Westridge uniform fitting him perfectly. Right on time, James says with approval. How was your math test? I think I got an A, Elijah says, grinning. Ms. Patterson says I have a natural aptitude for numbers. Excellent, your mother will be proud. They walk together toward the exit, an odd pair that has become a common sight at Westridge, the renowned businessman and the scholarship student from Oakwood Heights. How's your sister? James asks as they climb into the waiting car. She's walking now, and she tries to say my name. It sounds more like Lydia, though. Elijah buckles his seatbelt without prompting. Mama says she's the fastest baby she's ever seen. I'm not surprised. She has a determined spirit like her brother. Reynolds navigates through afternoon traffic as Elijah chatters about his classes, his new friends, the science project he's planning. James listens attentively, occasionally asking questions that prompt even more enthusiastic explanations. When they pull up to Magnolia Apartments, now sporting fresh paint, new windows, and a renovated playground, Elijah gathers his things but doesn't immediately exit. Mr. Whitfield, can I ask you something? Of course. My friend Marcus's dad says you used to be different, that you didn't care about people in neighborhoods like ours until recently. The boy's expression is serious, questioning. Is that true? The direct question catches James off guard. He considers deflecting, giving the kind of polished answer he might offer to business associates or journalists, but something about Elijah's earnest gaze demands honesty. Yes, he admits finally. That's true. For many years, I was focused solely on success as I defined it then, wealth, power, influence. I didn't think much about the impact of my decisions on communities like this one. What changed? A simple question with a complicated answer. James thinks back to that summer day, the broken milk bottle, the desperate plea from a child determined to keep his promise. I remembered something I'd forgotten, he says carefully, something about where I came from and what truly matters. Elijah nods thoughtfully. My mama says people can change if they want to bad enough, but most don't want to. Your mother is a wise woman. She likes her new job at your foundation. She gets to pick me up from school sometimes now. James smiles. I'm glad to hear it. She's been an invaluable asset to our community programs. Elijah gathers his backpack. Are you still coming to dinner on Friday? Mama's making her famous lasagna. I wouldn't miss it, James assures him. These Friday dinners have become a surprising highlight of his week. The casual conversation, Zora's delighted giggles when he makes faces at her, Tanya's grudgingly offered but genuine smiles. As Elijah climbs out of the car, he turns back. See you Friday, Mr. Whitfield? James watches him race up the steps, greeted by neighbors who wave from their balconies. The security door, now properly functioning, closes securely behind him. Back to the office, sir? Reynolds asks. Yes, James replies, his mind already shifting to the afternoon's meetings. But as they pull away from Magnolia Apartments, he finds himself thinking not of acquisition strategies or profit margins, but of a boy's promise to pay back a simple kindness when he grows up. Some debts, James reflects, are repaid in ways money could never measure. Later that afternoon, in his corner office overlooking the city, James reviews the latest proposal from his development team. Plans for the West End project, once slated to be luxury condominiums and high-end retail, now include affordable housing units, community spaces, and a scholarship fund for local students. His phone buzzes with a text from Tanya. Elijah got an A on his math test. He says you already know, but wanted to make sure you heard it from me too. Thank you again for everything. James smiles, typing back. He earned it. See you Friday. There's a knock at his door, and his assistant enters. Sir, the board members are gathered for the quarterly meeting. They're asking about the changes to the West End project. Mr. Davidson is particularly concerned about the projected revenue reduction. James straightens his tie. Tell them I'll be right there. As he gathers his materials, he glances at a new addition to his office, a framed child's drawing of a tall building with a garden on top. In careful printing at the bottom, the Whitfield Tower by Elijah Johnson, age 8. 6 months ago, such a sentimental display would have been unthinkable in the meticulously curated space of James Whitfield III. Now, it serves as a daily reminder of promises made and kept. In the boardroom, James faces the skeptical expressions of his executive team. These are men and women who have followed his lead for years, who have come to expect certain priorities and approaches from their founder and CEO. Before we begin, he says, standing at the head of the table, I want to address the concerns some of you have expressed about our new direction, particularly regarding the West End development. Richard Davidson, CFO and longest-serving executive, speaks up immediately. James, we've run the numbers repeatedly. The inclusion of affordable housing units reduces our profit margin by nearly 30%. The community center and scholarship fund add significant ongoing expenses. From a strictly business perspective, it doesn't make sense. Around the table, several heads nod in agreement. A strictly business perspective, James repeats. That's exactly what we need to reconsider. He clicks to display a slide showing two columns of figures. The left represents our traditional profit-maximizing approach. The right shows our new integrated community development model. He pauses. The bottom-line profits are indeed lower in the short term. But look at these metrics. Reduced tenant turnover, decreased security and maintenance costs, improved community relations, enhanced brand reputation. Sarah Chen, head of marketing, leans forward. The media coverage of our Magnolia Apartments renovation has been overwhelmingly positive. We've seen a 40% increase in positive brand sentiment. That translates to tangible benefits across all our properties. Precisely, James nods. But more importantly, we're creating sustainable communities rather than isolated luxury developments. People don't just want to live in beautiful buildings, they want to live in thriving neighborhoods. Davidson remains skeptical. This sounds more like charity than business strategy. It's both, James acknowledges, and neither. It's a recognition that we have responsibilities beyond quarterly profits, to our communities, to future generations, to ourselves. He pauses. I founded this company to build something meaningful. Somewhere along the way, I lost sight of what that truly means. The room falls silent as board members exchange glances. James Whitfield III has never spoken this way in a business meeting before. I'm not asking you to abandon profit as a goal, he continues. I'm asking you to expand your definition of success, to consider legacy in terms beyond dollars and square footage. For the next hour, they debate the new approach, examining projections, questioning assumptions, suggesting modifications. It's a robust discussion, exactly what James expected from his capable team. By the end, even Davidson reluctantly acknowledges the potential merits of the integrated model. As the meeting concludes, James's phone buzzes with another text. This one from a leaner. Caroline wants to know if you're available for lunch next week. She has wedding details to discuss. He pauses, thinking of his daughter. Their relationship has been strained for years, civil but distant, marked by the same cool efficiency that characterized his marriage to her mother. But recently, since he began spending time with Elijah and his family, James has found himself reaching out to Caroline more frequently. Small gestures at first, calls that lasted longer than the usual brief exchanges, questions about her life rather than just her accomplishments. Tell her Tuesday would be perfect, he types back. My treat. Alina's response comes quickly. She'll be pleased. You seem different lately, James, less rigid. He doesn't reply to that observation, though he can't deny its accuracy. Something has shifted in him, a gradual thawing that began that summer day in a corner store with a broken milk bottle and a child's earnest promise. As the boardroom empties, Sarah Chen lingers. That story you told at the charity gala last month, she says hesitantly. About the boy and the milk, was that true? James looks at her surprised. Yes, why do you ask? It just seemed personal, not like your usual speeches. She smiles. It was powerful. People are still talking about it. The most meaningful stories often are personal, he says. I'm beginning to understand that now. After Sarah leaves, James stands at the window of the boardroom, looking out at the city spread below. The Whitfield Tower dominates the skyline, its distinctive architecture and sky garden visible from miles away. Once that view represented everything he valued, the tangible proof of his success, his escape from Oakwood Heights, his transformation from Jimmy to James Whitfield III. Now he finds his gaze drawn to the edges of downtown, where Oakwood Heights begins. To the small corner store where a chance encounter changed the trajectory of multiple lives. To Magnolia Apartments, where a dinner with lasagna awaits him on Friday. His phone rings, Lawrence Gaines calling. Lawrence, he answers. How are you? Can't complain, the old man says. Listen, I've been thinking about your offer for that parcel next to the community center. I might be interested after all, but I've got some conditions. I'm listening. If we expand the center, I want a dedicated space for youth education programs, reading, math, college prep, that sort of thing. Named after my late wife, Josephine, James smiles. I think that can be arranged. Good, Gaines says gruffly. And Jimmy, that boy of yours, Elijah, my granddaughter is his math teacher at Westridge, says he's the brightest student she's had in years. He's not my boy, James corrects automatically, though the words lack conviction. But yes, he's quite remarkable. Gaines makes that same noncommittal sound he made months ago. Well, whoever's boy he is, he's going places. Reminds me of another youngster from Oakwood back in the day. After the call ends, James returns to his office to find an unexpected visitor waiting, Marissa Collins, once Marissa Johnson, his first love from a lifetime ago. She stands by the window, still striking at 60, her silver-streaked hair pulled back in a neat bun, her posture as straight as he remembers. "Marissa," he says, genuinely startled. "How did you—" "Your assistant recognized my name," she says. "Said you'd want to see me." She studies him. "It's been a long time, Jimmy." "Almost 40 years, he agrees. No one calls him Jimmy anymore except Lawrence Gaines, no one who remembers who he was before. "What brings you here?" She steps forward, placing a photograph on his desk. "My daughter Tanya showed me this article about your foundation's work in Oakwood Heights, about the businessman who's suddenly remembering his roots." James picks up the magazine, seeing himself in a carefully composed photo with community leaders, Tanya among them, professional and poised in her role as liaison. "Tanya is your daughter?" he asks, mind racing to connect dots he hadn't seen before. "My oldest." Marissa watches his face. "She doesn't know about us, about our history. I never told her." James sits heavily in his chair. "And Elijah, Zora, my grandchildren." Marissa's expression softens. "Elijah looks like his grandfather, my late husband, David, but he has your determination, your drive." "Marissa, James stops, unsure what to say. The coincidence seems too great, the connection's too perfect to be chance. "I had no idea." "Of course you didn't." She takes the seat across from him. "How could you? You left Oakwood behind a long time ago, left all of us behind." There's no accusation in her voice, just stated fact, but James feels the weight of it nonetheless. "I did what I thought I had to do then." "We all did," she acknowledges. "I'm not here to dredge up the past, Jimmy. I'm here because my daughter says you've taken a special interest in my grandson. I wanted to understand why." How to explain what he himself is still coming to understand. The recognition he felt seeing Elijah's determination, his responsibility, his promise to pay back a kindness. The echoes of his own childhood before ambition hardened into something colder. "I see something in him," James says finally. "Something worth nurturing." Marissa studies him for a long moment. "The man I knew at 18 wouldn't have stopped for a child with a broken milk bottle." "No," James agrees, "he wouldn't have. But the boy I knew at 8 would have." She smiles slightly. "The one who helped old Mrs. Patterson with her groceries every Wednesday, who tutored younger kids in math because the teacher asked him to." James feels something tight in his chest at the memory of who he was then, before scholarships and Harvard, before he reinvented himself as James Whitfield III, before success became measured only in acquisitions and assets. "Perhaps he's still in here somewhere," he says quietly. "That boy. I think he must be." Marissa stands. "Tanya doesn't need to know about our past. It's long gone, but I wanted to see for myself what kind of man is taking such an interest in my grandson." "And what have you concluded?" She considers him thoughtfully. "The jury's still out, but I see glimpses of someone I used to know, someone worth knowing again." After she leaves, James sits for a long time, turning over the connections, the coincidences, the twists of fate that led him back to Oakwood Heights that summer day. That led him to a boy who turns out to be connected to his own past in ways he never could have imagined. Is it possible that his path was meant to circle back this way? That the success he chased for decades was merely preparation for something else entirely? His phone buzzes with a calendar reminder. "Elijah Science Fair planning, 4:30 p.m. James gathers his things, an unexpected lightness in his step as he heads for the elevator. Some debts can never be repaid with money. Some promises matter more than others, and sometimes the most valuable investments yield returns that can't be measured on any balance sheet. If you've been touched by this story of unexpected connections and second chances, please subscribe and share your thoughts in the comments. We'd love to know where you're watching from and what moments resonated most with you. 2 years later, on a bright spring morning, James stands at the podium in the Westridge Preparatory School auditorium. Behind him sit rows of students in pressed uniforms, faculty in academic regalia, parents and community members filling every available seat. "It is my great pleasure," he says into the microphone, "to announce the establishment of the Oakwood Heights Scholarship Foundation. Beginning next fall, this program will provide full scholarships to Westridge for 20 students from Oakwood each year, along with mentorship and college preparation services." Applause fills the room. In the front row, Elijah, now 10 and growing rapidly, grins up at him. Beside him sits Tanya, professional in a tailored suit, her role at the Whitfield Foundation having expanded to Director of Community Programs. 2-year-old Zora, in a pretty dress with her hair in puffs tied with yellow ribbons, bounces on her mother's lap. "This initiative," James continues, "grew from a simple observation. Talent and potential exist everywhere, but opportunity does not. When I was a child growing up in Oakwood Heights, I was fortunate to receive a scholarship that changed the trajectory of my life. Today, we expand that opportunity to more young people with the same dreams and determination." He doesn't mention that for decades, He hid his origins, constructed an identity that erased his beginnings. That part of his story remains private, though those closest to him now know the truth. Our first scholarship recipient, Elijah Johnson, has demonstrated exactly the kind of excellence this program aims to foster. In just 2 years at Westridge, he has maintained a perfect GPA, founded the Junior Engineering Club, and developed a peer tutoring program that pairs Westridge students with elementary children from Oakwood. More applause. Elijah sits up straighter, a flush of pride on his cheeks. "Elijah," James says, looking directly at the boy, "would you join me up here?" Surprised, Elijah glances at his mother, who nods encouragingly. He makes his way to the stage, steps measured and confident. Standing beside James at the podium, the boy seems both nervous and proud, his Westridge blazer slightly too big in the shoulders, room to grow. "Elijah," James says, "when we first met, you made me a promise. Do you remember what it was?" The boy nods. "I promised to pay you back for the milk when I grow up." A ripple of laughter travels through the audience. "That's right. And I want you to know that you've already repaid that debt many times over, not with money, but with your character, your dedication, and your generosity toward others." James places a hand on Elijah's shoulder. "2 years ago, a chance encounter changed my perspective on what truly matters in life. This scholarship foundation is the result of that change, a recognition that our greatest legacy isn't in buildings or bank accounts, but in the lives we touch and the opportunities we create." He turns back to the audience. The Oakwood Heights Scholarship Foundation will be guided by a board of community leaders, educators, and business representatives. I'm pleased to announce that Tanya Johnson has agreed to serve as executive director, bringing her unparalleled understanding of both Oakwood's needs and Westridge's opportunities. Tanya smiles, bouncing Zora on her knee as another round of applause fills the room. After the ceremony, as guests mingle at the reception, James finds himself approached by a familiar face, Eleanor accompanied by their daughter Caroline and her husband Robert. "Quite the philanthropic gesture," Eleanor says, her tone suggesting she's still determining whether to approve or not. "Caroline insisted we attend." "I'm glad you did." James nods to his daughter and son-in-law. "Thank you for coming." Caroline steps forward. "Dad, I wanted to meet him, Elijah, the boy you've told me about." "Course." James scans the room, spotting Elijah with his mother and sister. "Come, I'll introduce you." As they make their way across the room, James notices how differently he moves through these spaces now, not with the cold efficiency of before, but with genuine connections, stopping to greet parents he knows, students who call out to him, teachers who share quick updates on their classes. "Elijah," he says when they reach the Johnsons, "I'd like you to meet my daughter, Caroline." The boy extends his hand politely. "It's nice to meet you, Ms. Whitfield." "Actually, it's Dr. Campbell now," Caroline corrects gently. "I'm a surgeon, but you can call me Caroline," she smiles at him. "My father has told me a lot about you. He says you're quite the engineer in the making." Elijah grins. "I'm building a solar-powered water filtration system for the science fair. Mr. Whitfield has been helping me with the design." Caroline raises an eyebrow at her father. "Has he?" "I wasn't aware engineering was in your skill set, Dad." "I've been learning alongside Elijah," James admits. "It's been educational." The conversation flows easily as Caroline asks Elijah about his projects, his sister, his time at Westridge. James watches with a strange mixture of emotions as his two worlds intersect, the family he made and the family he's found. Later, as the reception winds down, Caroline pulls him aside. "He's remarkable," she says quietly. "I can see why you've taken such an interest." "He is," James agrees, "and his mother, she seems very capable. Tanya is one of the most competent people I've ever met. The foundation wouldn't be possible without her leadership." Caroline studies him. "You seem happy, Dad, happier than I can remember seeing you." The observation catches him off guard. "Do I?" "Yes," she hesitates. "Mom says you've gone soft, that you're letting sentiment cloud your business judgment." James smiles slightly. "Your mother always did prioritize pragmatism. So did you once." Caroline looks at him curiously. "What changed?" It's the same question Elijah asked him 2 years ago, and James still finds it difficult to articulate the full answer. How does one explain a lifetime of driving ambition suddenly redirected? A success story rewritten in the final chapters. "I remembered something important that I'd forgotten," he says finally. "Something about promises and their true value." Caroline nods, though he can see she doesn't fully understand. Perhaps someday she will. As the reception ends, James finds himself standing with Tanya and her children near the entrance. Zora, tired from the long event, rests her head on her mother's shoulder, thumb in her mouth. "A successful launch," Tanya says, professional pride evident in her voice. "The application portal already has 30 submissions since we went live this morning." "Excellent." James smiles at Elijah. "And what did you think of your first public speaking experience?" The boy grins. It was scary at first, but then I just focused on telling the truth, like you said. The best speeches always do, James agrees. As they walk toward the parking lot, Elijah suddenly asks, Mr. Whitfield, are you coming to my science fair presentation next week? I wouldn't miss it, James assures him. I've cleared my entire afternoon. Tanya gives him a knowing look. The great James Whitfield rearranging his schedule for a fifth-grade science fair. Who would have believed it 2 years ago? Certainly not me, he admits. As they reach their respective cars, Elijah hesitates, then asks, Mr. Whitfield, do you think I could be like you someday, have big buildings and help people go to good schools? The question touches something deep in James. I think, he says carefully, you'll be even better. Because you're starting with the most important understanding that took me decades to learn. What's that? That success isn't measured by what you have, but by the difference you make. James places a hand on the boy's shoulder. And you're already making quite a difference, Elijah Johnson. The boy beams under the praise, standing a little taller. As James watches them drive away, Tanya at the wheel of the reliable sedan he helped her purchase, Elijah waving from the back seat, Zora already asleep in her car seat. He feels that now familiar warmth in his chest. The sensation that took him so long to recognize, not pride of possession or achievement, but something simpler and more profound. Connection, purpose, a different kind of legacy than the one he spent decades building. Back in his own car, as Reynolds navigates toward home, James receives a text from Marissa. Saw the announcement about the Scholarship Foundation. David would have been proud. I know I am. A simple message, but it means more than the accolades and awards that fill his office shelves. Later that evening, in his penthouse overlooking the city, James stands at the window with a rare glass of scotch. The skyline glitters below, the Whitfield Tower prominent among the buildings that bear witness to his business success. But his gaze, as it often does now, drifts toward Oakwood Heights, where a boy once promised to pay back the cost of a bottle of milk when he grew up, and in doing so unwittingly led a successful man back to the beginnings he had tried so hard to leave behind. Some promises are kept in unexpected ways. Some debts can never truly be repaid, only passed forward. And sometimes the most valuable transaction is the one that reminds us of who we really are. This concludes our story today. If you've been moved by this tale of unexpected connections and second chances, please subscribe to our channel and share your thoughts in the comments below. Where are you watching from? Which moments resonated most with you? We'd love to hear your perspective as we continue sharing stories that touch the heart and remind us of our shared humanity.